I found the gold mine everyone said was cursed. They warned me the last 7 men who went down came back blind. Their eyes burned white as milk. I didn't believe them. But when I lit my torch in that darkness and saw what was carved into the walls, names, dates, warnings written in blood, I understood. Some treasures aren't meant for the living. Some debts are paid in souls. These lands know pain better than joy. Every mark in the sand tells a story, but folks rarely listen. I saw this tale with my own eyes, like the crackle of a fire at night. The shadows of the past don't leave. You'd best listen close. Out here, it's the only way to survive. The Arizona Territory, 1877. Summer heat turned the desert into a furnace that could crack a man's resolve faster than his skin. I'd been riding for 6 weeks straight, following a map I'd won in a poker game from a half-drunk prospector who claimed he'd rather lose his fortune than his sanity. Silver Vein Mine, he called it, his hand shaking as he pushed the yellowed paper across the table. Worth more than 10 fortunes, but it'll cost you your soul. I laughed then. I'd lost enough already, my family to fever, my farm to drought, my faith to a war that chewed up young men and spit out hollowed shells. What was a soul compared to survival? The mine entrance sat at the base of a red rock canyon, half buried by decades of desert wind and time's cruel indifference. The wooden support beams were rotted through, hanging like broken ribs. Scattered around the opening were remnants of previous expeditions, rusted pickaxes, torn canvas, a single boot with the leather split down the middle, and skulls. 3 of them, bleached white by the merciless sun, their empty sockets staring at nothing. The locals in the nearest town, a dried-up settlement called Resurrection Creek, ironic given how many folks seemed to be dying there, had warned me off. That mine's been closed 20 years, the bartender said. There's one good eye fixed on me with something between pity and fear. Last group that went in, 7 strong men, came out 3 days later, every one of them blind, eyes white as boiled eggs. Couldn't speak neither, just made these sounds. He trailed off, shaking his head. What kind of sounds? I'd pressed. Screaming, he'd said simply. Screaming without opening their mouths. I should have turned around. Any man with sense would have. But sense is a luxury for those who have something left to lose. The torch flame flickered as I descended into the darkness, casting wild shadows that danced across walls slick with moisture. The air grew colder with each step downward, thick and heavy like breathing through wet wool. My boots crunched on loose gravel, the sound echoing in the narrow shaft. 20 feet down, 40. The sunlight behind me faded to a distant memory. That's when I saw the first carving. It was scratched into the rock face at eye level, crude but deliberate. Turn back, the silver seas. The letters were dark, stained with something that could have been rust or dried blood. My torchlight revealed more messages as I continued deeper. Names with dates. Jacob Morse, 1857, I'm sorry. The Espinosa Brothers took our eyes. Don't take the silver. The tunnel opened into a wider chamber, and my breath caught in my throat. The walls glittered with veins of silver or so thick and pure they reflected my torchlight like mirrors. I'd never seen anything like it. A fortune that would set up 3 generations, maybe 4. The prospector hadn't been lying. This was wealth beyond imagining. But something was wrong. The silver wasn't the only thing embedded in the walls. Between the veins of or were bones, human bones, pressed into the rock face as if they'd grown there. Rib cages, skulls, finger bones arranged in patterns that made my skin crawl. And carved above them, in letters 3 feet high. The price of greed is sight. The price of knowledge is sanity. The price of taking is everything. I stumbled backward, my torch nearly dropping from trembling hands. The chamber seemed to pulse, the silver catching light that shouldn't have been there, glowing faintly with its own cold luminescence. That's when I heard it, a sound like wind through broken glass, or voices whispering from underwater. Not words, exactly, but something that formed meaning directly in my mind. Take what you came for. Everyone does. Everyone pays. My rational mind screamed to run, but desperation makes cowards of the wise and fools of the desperate. I'd come this far. I'd risked everything. And there, scattered across the chamber floor like an offering, were chunks of pure silver or the size of my fist. Just one piece, I told myself. Just enough to start over. I bent down and picked up a single chunk of silver. It was cold, impossibly cold, burning my palm even through my glove. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, filling the chamber until it felt like my skull might crack from the pressure. Then the torches went out. Not my torch, torches I hadn't lit. Ancient sconces along the chamber walls suddenly blazed to life, with blue-white flames that cast no heat. In their glow, I saw them, figures standing in the shadows at the chamber's edges. Men, or what had been men once. Their faces were pale as moon dust, their eyes. God help me, their eyes were silver. Solid silver, gleaming like polished coins where their pupils should have been. They didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, watching me with those terrible metallic eyes. I ran, dropped the silver chunk, and ran like hell itself was chasing me. The tunnel behind me filled with that underwater whispering, growing to a roar that threatened to burst my eardrums. My torch went out, plunging me into darkness, but somehow I could still see. A faint silver glow emanating from my hands, from the walls, from everywhere and nowhere. I burst from the mine entrance gasping, falling to my knees in the hot desert sand. The sun burned my eyes after the darkness, and I squeezed them shut against the pain. When I opened them again, my vision was blurred, distorted. Everything had a silver sheen to it, like looking through tarnished glass. I blinked hard, trying to clear it. The silver tinge faded slightly, but didn't disappear entirely. My hands were shaking, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest. Behind me, from deep within the mine, came that sound the bartender had described. Screaming. Soundless screaming that bypassed my ears and went straight into my brain. I mounted my horse and rode. Didn't look back. Didn't stop until Resurrection Creek was 20 miles behind me. But even then, even in the honest light of day, everything I looked at carried that faint silver shimmer at its edges. The prospector had been right about one thing. The mine would cost me my soul. What he hadn't mentioned was that it would give me something in return. I could see things now. Things that shouldn't be visible. Silver threads connecting everything. People, places, moments in time. And worst of all, I could see death approaching. It had a color. A silver glow that surrounded the living like a shroud, growing brighter as they moved closer to their end. 3 days later, back in Resurrection Creek, I saw it on the bartender who'd warned me. His silver glow was blinding. He'd be dead within the week. I told him to leave town, told him something bad was coming. He laughed nervously and poured me another whiskey with shaking hands. For days later, his saloon burned down with him inside it. That's when I understood. The curse wasn't blindness. It was sight, terrible, unbearable sight. The ability to see everything, including the very things that would drive a man mad. And the only way to be free of it was to go back into that mine. Back to where the silver-eyed men waited in the darkness. Back to pay whatever price they demanded for the knowledge I'd stolen. But first, I had to find out what they really were, and why 7 men had gone in before me. 7 men whose names I'd seen carved into those walls. Because 3 of those names were from 1877, this year. And I'd only been to the mine once. The visions got worse. By the end of the first week, I couldn't sleep without seeing them. The silver-eyed men from the mine, standing at the foot of my bed, their metallic eyes reflecting nothing, revealing everything. They didn't threaten. They didn't speak. They just watched with that terrible patience that only the dead possess. I tried to drink them away. The whiskey in Resurrection Creek was cheap and burned like coal oil going down. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except making the visions stop. But alcohol only made it worse. With every drink, the silver threads I could see connecting everything grew brighter, more complex, weaving patterns I couldn't understand but felt compelled to follow. One night, deep in my cups, I saw a thread leading from my table to a figure in the corner, a woman, old as the desert, her face carved with lines deeper than any canyon. She'd been watching me for 3 nights straight, and I'd been too afraid to acknowledge her. but the silver thread between us pulsed with urgency, pulling at something behind my breastbone. "You touched the silver," she said. It wasn't a question. Her voice was like wine through dead leaves, dry and rustling. "You have the sight now." "I don't want it," I said, my words slurring. "I want it gone." She laughed, a sound without humor. "The Espinosa Brothers don't give gifts, boy. They take payment. You went into their mind, breathed their air, saw their treasure. Now you belong to them." The Espinosa Brothers? The carvings mentioned them. Who were they? The old woman leaned forward, her eyes catching the lamplight. "Silver miners. Brothers. Came to Arizona in '52 during the first rush. Found that vein and went mad with greed. They killed 17 men over 6 months. Anyone who came near their claim. When the law finally caught up to them, they made a choice." "What choice?" "They took the silver into themselves, melted it down, drank it, injected it into their veins. Said if they couldn't have the fortune in life, they'd become the fortune in death. The silver poisoned them, but it also changed them, preserved them, trapped them between living and dying, forever guarding their treasure." My stomach turned cold. The figures I saw in the mine are the Espinosa Brothers and every fool who tried to take from them since. 7 men went in before you this year alone. All came out with the sight, all dead within a month. "How?" She smiled, terrible knowing. "They saw their own deaths coming, watched it approach, waited for it. And when a man knows exactly when and how he'll die, well, sometimes he just lies down and lets it happen. The terror is too much." I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white. There has to be a way to break it. I didn't take anything. I dropped the silver. I ran. But you touched it, and touching is taking in their world. She reached across the table and grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. Her fingers were ice cold. "There's one way. Only one. You have to pay their price." "What price?" 7 days in the mine. Alone. In the darkness. The silver will test you. Show you everything you've lost. Everything you fear. Everything you could have been. If you survive with your sanity intact, the sight leaves you. If you don't. She released my wrist, leaving silver fingerprints on my skin that faded as I watched. "Then you joined them. Another guardian for their treasure. Another warning that goes unheeded. 7 days? I'll starve. Die of thirst. Maybe. But that's not the real danger." She stood, gathering her shawl around her thin shoulders. "The real danger is what the silver shows you. It don't lie, you see. It shows truth. Pure truth. And most men can't bear that for 7 minutes, let alone 7 days." She started toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing. While you're down there, don't light any torches. The silver glows on its own. You'll see everything you need to see. The light only attracts attention from things older than the Espinosa Brothers. Things that were there before the silver, that the silver trapped when it formed in the earth 1,000,000 years ago." "What kind of things?" But she was already gone, slipping out into the night like smoke. I sat alone in the saloon, watching the silver threads pulse and weave between the remaining patrons. I could see their deaths now, clear as day. The prospector in the corner, 3 months. The gambler at the far table, 6 days. In a knife fight he didn't see coming, but I could. The bartender's replacement, lung fever, 2 years. And my own reflection in the mirror behind the bar. The silver glow around me was so bright it hurt to look at. Days, maybe hours. I had no choice. At dawn, I gathered supplies, water, dried beef, blankets, though I doubted I'd need the food. 7 days. The old woman said 7 days. I could survive anything for 7 days. The ride back to the mine took 4 hours. The desert was quiet, too quiet, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Vultures circled overhead, though there was nothing dead visible. Not yet. The mine entrance looked different in daylight, smaller somehow, less threatening. But when I peered into that darkness, I could see the silver glow far below, pulsing like a heartbeat. Waiting. I left my horse tied outside with enough water to last a week. If I didn't come back, maybe someone would find it. Maybe someone would know I tried. The descent was easier the second time, though my hands still shook. The silver veins in the walls grew brighter as I descended, illuminating the tunnel with that cold, unhealthy glow. I didn't need a torch. Just as the old woman had said, the silver provided its own light. The chamber at the bottom looked the same. Bones in the walls, carved warnings, chunks of or scattered like offerings. But the silver-eyed figures were gone. For now, I found a relatively flat section of floor near the center of the chamber and spread out my blanket. My watch showed 9 a.m., August 3rd, 1877. 7 days from now would be August 10th. If I was still alive, still sane. The whispering started almost immediately. Not words, but impressions. Memories that weren't mine. I saw the Espinosa Brothers as they'd been in life. 2 men with black beards and hard eyes, their hands permanently stained with silver dust and blood. I saw them killing, defending their claim with ruthless efficiency. I saw them melting the silver, drinking the molten metal, their screams echoing in this very chamber as it burned through them, transforming them. I saw the 17 men they'd killed, saw their faces, their fear, their final moments, and I understood. The silver didn't just show you truth. It showed you all truth. Every truth. Past, present, future, spinning together in an infinite web of causality and consequence. No human mind was built to process that. No human soul could bear it. This was going to be the longest 7 days of my life. Or the last. Day 1 in the mine lasted approximately 73 years. Or maybe it was just 12 hours. Time lost meaning when the silver started showing me things. I saw my father as a young man, before the war, before bitterness carved lines into his face. He was laughing, actually laughing, something I'd never witnessed in life. The silver showed me the exact moment that Joy died. A letter arriving, news of his brother's death, the light in his eyes dimming like a candle snuffed out. I watched him make the decision to become hard, to never risk loving anything that deeply again, including me. I saw my wife, dead 3 years now from fever, but the silver showed me her final thoughts, the ones she'd been too weak to speak aloud. She hadn't been afraid of dying. She'd been afraid of leaving me alone, knowing what loneliness would do to me, knowing I'd seek death in slow ways, whiskey, gambling, foolish quests into cursed mines. She'd seen my future, and it had broken her heart more than the fever ever could. I wept. Couldn't help it. The truth was too heavy, too real. This was the curse, not blindness, but seeing everything with perfect clarity, stripped of the merciful delusions that let people function, without lies, without hope, without the comfortable ignorance that separated man from God. The silver-eyed figures appeared on the second day, or maybe it was still the first. They stood in a circle around me, 7 of them now instead of the crowd I'd glimpsed before. Each one had a name carved into their chest. The 7 men from this year who'd entered the mine before me. Jacob Morse, Daniel Hutchins, the Riley twins, Marcus Cole, Samuel Vance, Thomas Birch. They didn't speak, but I could see their stories. Jacob had come seeking fortune to save his family farm, failed, hanged himself 2 weeks after leaving the mine. Daniel had wanted to prove himself to a father who'd never believed in him, drank himself to death 9 days out, the sight of his father's disappointment too much to bear. The twins had made a bet about who was braver. Both shot each other in a suicide pact after seeing the interconnected web of suffering their entire family line had caused over generations. Each death tied directly to what the silver had shown them. Truth without mercy. Reality without hope. You're stronger than them, a voice said. I spun around. One of the figures had moved closer. Marcus Cole, according to the carving on his chest. His silver eyes reflected my terrified face. You've already lost everything. That gives you an advantage. I thought you couldn't speak. I managed. We can't. You're hearing your own thoughts, reflected through us. The silver doesn't talk. It just shows. You're seeing what you need to see. He gestured to the walls. 3 more days. You're already halfway through. It's only been... I checked my watch. The hands hadn't moved since I'd entered. How long? Time moves differently here. The silver exists in all moments simultaneously. Past, present, future. They're all the same in this chamber. You could be here for 7 days or 7 minutes. Won't know until you leave. If I leave. If you leave, he agreed. His silver eyes flickered. Most don't. Most see themselves from the outside. See what they really are, not what they pretend to be. And they just stop. Give up. Join us. What did you see? What made you give up? Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then, I saw my daughter. Saw her whole life. Saw her marry a man who'd beat her. Saw her have children who'd abandon her. Saw her die alone, bitter, blaming me for leaving. And I saw that if I'd lived, if I'd gone back to her, she'd have hated me anyway. There was no version of events where I was a good father. The silver showed me every path, every choice, and they all led to her suffering. So I chose the path where I didn't have to watch it happen. That's a coward's choice. Maybe, but it's an honest one. He stepped back, rejoining the circle. The silver respects honesty. Truth. That's why it gives the sight. To separate those who can face reality from those who need comfortable eyes to survive. The other figures stirred, their silver eyes all turning toward me in unison. The whispering grew louder, filling the chamber. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it made no difference. The sound was inside my head, inside my bones. I saw my future then, all possible futures, branching out like silver threads. In one, I left the mine, returned to ordinary life, but carried the sight forever, watching everyone I met march toward death, unable to warn them, unable to change anything. In another, I stayed in the mine, became another guardian, another warning. In a third, I took the silver, melted it down like the Espinosa Brothers had, tried to become something other than human, to escape the burden of humanity. Every path led to suffering. Every choice had a cost. The silver wasn't lying. It was just showing me what everyone secretly knows, but refuses to acknowledge. There are no good endings, only different kinds of pain. I laughed then. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all. Traveling across half a territory, risking my life, descending into a cursed mine, all to learn what any drunk philosopher could have told me in a bar. Life is suffering. Death is inevitable. And the only real choice is how you bear it. The silver-eyed figures watched me laugh, watched me cry, watched me rage against the walls, screaming at the bones and the ore and the ancient darkness. And when I finally collapsed, exhausted, they were still there, still watching with those terrible, patient eyes. Show me the rest, I whispered. If I'm going to bear it, show me everything. No mercy, no holding back. I want to see it all. The silver pulsed once, a wave of cold light that washed over me. And then I saw the birth of stars and their death. I saw the first humans discovering fire and the last humans watching the sun die. I saw every moment of love and betrayal, every act of courage and cowardice, every birth and death and triumph and tragedy, all layered on top of each other, all happening simultaneously in the eternal now. The silver existed within. I saw God, or what passes for God in a universe too vast for mercy. It was just math, just physics, just the inevitable consequences of actions stretching back to the moment existence began. No judgment, no salvation, just cause and effect, spiraling forward forever. I should have gone mad, would have, probably, if I had been a different man. But losing everything had given me something the others lacked. Nothing left to protect. No illusions, no hopes, no dreams that could be shattered by truth. When the visions finally faded, I was on my hands and knees, vomiting onto the silver-flecked stone. The figures had retreated to the shadows. My watch, still frozen, mocked me with its motionless hands. But I was still breathing, still conscious, still human barely. Day 3, I said aloud, my voice echoing. 4 more to go. From the darkness, the whispering took on a different tone. Not hostile, almost approving. The silver had shown me everything, and I hadn't broken. Not yet. On what I believed was the 5th day. Though time had become meaningless, the Espinosa brothers themselves appeared, not as the silver-eyed guardians, but as they'd been in life. Solid. Real. Their voices like grinding stone. "You're still here," the taller one said. Luis. I somehow knew his name was Luis. His brother, Francisco, stood beside him, arms crossed. Both looked surprised. Disappointed. I asked. "Impressed," Francisco said. "Most last 2 days before the visions break them. You've endured things that would have destroyed wiser men. Maybe I'm already destroyed. Maybe I just don't know it yet." Luis laughed, a sound like rocks sliding down a mountainside. "Oh, you know, the silver doesn't allow ignorance. That's its curse and its gift. You see yourself clearly now, don't you? See what you really are." I nodded slowly. The silver had stripped away every comfortable lie I had told myself. I wasn't a good man forced into bad circumstances. I was a coward who'd let my family die while I was off seeking glory in a war I didn't believe in. I wasn't a victim of fate. I was the architect of my own suffering, making the same destructive choices over and over, blaming everyone but myself. "That's the first real step," Luis said. "Truth. Brutal, unfiltered truth. Most men call it despair. We call it clarity. Why are you here?" The others just watched. "You're different." Francisco stepped forward. Even as a ghost or memory or whatever he was, he radiated intensity. "Because you're the first in 50 years who might actually understand. Might actually be worthy." Worthy of what? The gift we tried to give ourselves. The transformation we didn't complete. Luis gestured to the silver veins in the walls. "We drank the silver, let it into our blood, thinking it would make us immortal. Make us gods. We were half right. It made us eternal, but not alive. We're trapped, stuck between, unable to leave, unable to die properly, unable to do anything but guard this place and watch fools come seeking fortune. So I'm trapped here now. Only if you choose to be," Francisco said. "The silver showed you truth. The question is, what will you do with it?" Most men, confronted with the meaninglessness of existence, choose oblivion. They join us, become guardians. Let the silver preserve them in this in-between state. It's easier than facing the world knowing what you know. But I sensed there was more. "But," Luis continued, "a few, very few, choose differently. They take the knowledge back to the surface. They live with the weight of it. They see the silver threads connecting everything, watch death approach, understand the futility of it all, and they choose to live anyway. Those are the dangerous ones. Dangerous. To us. To the silver. To the whole structure of comfortable lies that keeps society functioning." Francisco's eyes, still human, not silver yet, burned with intensity. A man who sees truth and doesn't flinch, who understands the game is rigged but plays anyway. That's someone who can change things. We're trying to become that, trying to transcend. But we chose the wrong path. We tried to escape humanity rather than embrace it. The chamber trembled. The silver veins pulsed, and for a moment I could feel the ancient intelligence within them. Not the brothers, but something older, something that had been here before the earth cooled, that had been trapped in this silver when it formed deep underground eons ago. "What is it?" I whispered. "The thing beneath the silver?" "Hope," Luis said simply. "The last thing to die. The most dangerous thing in the universe. It survived the formation of stars, the cooling of planets, got trapped in the silver ore, and has been waiting ever since. That's what gives the sight, not the metal, but what the metal contains. Raw, undiluted hope. And hope, when you see it clearly, looks a lot like madness." The chamber brightened, the silver glow intensifying, until I had to shield my eyes. When I lowered my hand, I was alone again. The brothers had vanished. The 7 guardians had vanished. Even the bones in the walls seemed to have retreated into shadow. Just me and the silver. I stood on shaking legs and walked to the nearest vein. Reached out, touched it. The vision that followed nearly broke me. I saw myself leaving the mine. Saw myself returning to civilization carrying the sight. Seeing death approach people days or weeks before it arrived. I saw myself trying to warn them, trying to change fate, failing every time because that's not how time works. The silver threads don't predict the future. They show what's already written, already determined by 10,000 tiny choices building toward inevitable conclusions. I saw myself going mad from it. Saw myself in an asylum, screaming about silver threads while doctors shook their heads and prescribed laudanum. Saw myself dying alone, still seeing the connections, still bearing the weight of knowledge that crushed me slowly over decades. But I also saw another path. I saw myself learning to live with it, learning to see the silver threads not as chains, but as connections, proof that nothing exists in isolation, that every action ripples outward, touching countless lives. I saw myself using the sight to find people on the edge of making terrible mistakes and gently, carefully, nudging them toward better choices, not changing fate. That was impossible, but helping people see their own silver threads, their own connections, their own truth. I saw myself becoming something like a prophet, though that word felt too grand, more like a guide, someone who descended into hell and returned with maps. It would be hard. God, it would be harder than anything. Living with truth, with sight, with the constant weight of knowing how everything connects and ends. That was a burden heavier than any curse. But it was also the only path that meant anything. The only path that wasn't surrender. I pulled my hand back from the silver, took a breath, made my choice. I'm leaving, I said aloud. I'm taking the sight with me, and I'm going to learn to bear it. The whispering in the chamber changed tone again. Approval, definitely approval. And something else, relief? As if the silver itself had been waiting for someone to make this choice, to prove it was possible. How much longer? I asked. How many more days? The answer came not in words, but in understanding. I'd already been here 7 days. The test wasn't endurance, it was choice. The moment I decided to leave, to bear the burden rather than escape it, the trial ended. I gathered my blanket, my supplies untouched. I hadn't needed them. The human body could survive on silver light and visions, apparently. My watch started ticking again. August 10th, 2:17 p.m. 7 days exactly. I walked toward the tunnel leading up to the surface. Behind me, the Silver Guardians materialized one final time. All 7, plus the Espinosa Brothers, standing in a line. They didn't speak, didn't move. Just watched me go with their terrible silver eyes. At the tunnel entrance, I paused and looked back. Thank you, I said. Met it. Luis Espinosa inclined his head slightly. Don't thank us yet. What you're about to face is harder than anything you endured down here. Reality doesn't forgive truth-tellers. Be careful, brother. The world doesn't want to see its silver threads. I know, I said. That's why it needs to. And I climbed toward the light. The desert sun hit me like a physical blow. I'd spent 7 days in cold darkness, and the light was aggressive, hostile, burning my eyes and skin. I stumbled out of the mine entrance and fell to my knees in the red dust, gasping, my body remembering how to breathe surface air. My horse was still there. 7 days, and it had waited. The water I'd left was nearly gone, but the animal had survived. When it saw me, it whinnied, not with joy, but with fear. It could sense something different about me. Something changed. I stood slowly, my legs unsteady, and walked to the horse. Placed my hand on its neck, trying to calm it. The silver threads were immediately visible. Hundreds of them, connecting the horse to the desert, to the water, to the mine, to me, to its past and future. I could see it would live another 8 years, die peacefully in the stable somewhere east of here. Could see every major moment of its life branching out from this point. Easy, I whispered. I'm still me. Mostly. The ride back to Resurrection Creek took 6 hours. My body was weak from 7 days without food, but my mind was sharper than it had ever been. Too sharp. I could see death hanging over the town before I even reached the outskirts. Silver shrouds around buildings, around people, marking where and when tragedy would strike. The saloon where I'd met the old woman was going to burn down in 3 months. The general store would be robbed in 6 weeks, the owner killed. The church would be struck by lightning in 2 years, killing the priest. Death everywhere, layered over life like a second skin. How did people live, not seeing this? How did they wake up each morning, not knowing the sword hanging over their heads? The ignorance seemed like bliss now, like mercy. I rode straight to the saloon. The replacement bartender, the one I'd known had 2 years before lung fever killed him, looked up as I entered. His eyes widened. "Jesus," he breathed. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Many ghosts," I said. "Is the old woman still in town? The one who was here last week?" He shook his head. "Left the day after you did. Headed south, last I heard. But she left something for you." He reached under the bar and pulled out a small leather pouch. "Said you'd come back. Said you'd be different. Said to give you this." I took the pouch. Inside was a pair of spectacles with darkened lenses. A note was tied to them. "For when the sight becomes too much, they filter the silver threads. Let you see the world the way normal people see it. Use sparingly. Truth is your gift now. Don't waste it." I held the spectacles up to the light. The lenses were dark but clear, with a faint silver tint. When I put them on, the world shifted. The silver threads faded. Not gone, but muted. Background noise instead of overwhelming static. The bartender's death shroud was barely visible. The connections were subtle threads instead of binding chains. Relief washed over me so intense I nearly wept. I could control it. I could choose when to see and when to rest. "You all right, friend?" the bartender asked, concerned. "Better than I've been in years," I said honestly. "Pour me a whiskey. The good stuff." He obliged, and I sat at the bar, the spectacles still on, watching the town through filtered vision. People came and went, going about their lives, unaware of the silver threads binding them to consequence and fate. It was beautiful in a way. The courage it took to live without knowing. The faith required to keep moving forward when every step could lead to disaster. Maybe that was the real lesson. Not that life was meaningless, but that meaning came from choosing to live despite knowing the truth. Choosing hope even when hope looked like madness. A stranger sat down next to me. Young, maybe 20, with hard eyes and a desperate edge. I could see his silver threads without even trying. He was planning to rob the general store tonight. Could see it as clear as if he'd told me aloud. Could see the robbery going wrong, the owner pulling a gun, the stranger dying in the dirt outside with a bullet in his gut. 6 weeks from now. His death was already written in the silver threads. Before the mine, I would have let happen. Would have told myself it wasn't my business, that fate was fate. But I'd made a choice down in that darkness. I'd chosen to bear the burden of sight, and part of that burden was acting on what I saw. I turned to him. "Don't do it," I said quietly. He stiffened. "Don't do what?" "Whatever you're planning. The general store. Tonight. Don't do it. You'll die, and it won't mean anything. Your death won't save anyone, won't prove anything. It'll just be waste." His hand moved toward the gun at his hip. "How do you?" "I see things," I said simply. "Connections. Futures. I've been blessed and cursed with sight. And I'm telling you, walk away. Leave town tonight. Head east. There's work in Silver City, honest work. You'll meet a woman there in 3 months. She'll save your life in ways you can't imagine, but only if you're alive to meet her." He stared at me for a long moment. I could see the choice forming in the silver threads, 2 paths diverging, one leading to death in 6 weeks, the other to life, love, redemption. The threads were shifting, responding to the information I'd given him, creating new possibilities. "Why do you care?" he asked finally. "Because someone showed me truth when I needed it. Now I'm passing it forward. That's all any of us can do." He stood slowly, dropped money on the bar, looked at me one more time. "You're either crazy or a prophet." "Both, probably," I admitted. He left. I watched through the window as he walked to the stable, mounted his horse, and rode east. The silver threads around him shifted, brightened. The death shroud faded. Not gone. Death would come eventually for everyone, but postponed. Changed. Made meaningful instead of wasteful. The bartender was watching me. What was that about? "Just sharing some advice," I said. "Pour me another." As I sat there, I realized this was my path now. Not grand prophecy or a divine mission, Just small interventions, gentle nudges, helping people see their own connections before they made choices they couldn't take back. It would never be easy. The weight of seeing so much would crush me some days. But it was purpose. It was meaning. It was a way to bear the unbearable. The curse had become a gift. The sight, properly used, was salvation. I left Resurrection Creek the next morning, heading east myself. There were other towns, other people, other threads to follow. The silver mine was behind me. But what I'd learned there would stay forever. 7 days in darkness had given me a lifetime of light. 5 years passed. I wandered the territories, following the silver threads to places where they converged, moments of crisis, crossroads where lives hung in balance. I became known by whispers and rumors. The Silver Prophet. Some called me the man who sees. Others said. A few called me the Devil's Herald. Convinced anyone who could see fate must be in league with darkness. They were all partly right. I saved lives when I could. A warning here, a word of advice there, small interventions that shifted the threads just enough to change outcomes. I couldn't save everyone. Fate wasn't that flexible, but I could save some, and that had to be enough. Sometimes the silver threads led me to dying towns, and I'd arrive just in time to warn of coming disasters, floods, fires, bandit raids. Sometimes I'd find people on the edge of terrible decisions and show them alternatives. Sometimes I'd just sit with the dying, helping them see their own silver threads, understand how their lives had touched others, find meaning in the connections they'd made. It was exhausting, soul-crushing, beautiful, terrible, everything all at once. The spectacles helped. I wore them most days, filtering the sight to manageable levels. But some nights, when the weight was too heavy, I'd take them off and let the full force of the vision wash over me. All the connections, all the threads, all the truth. It hurt. God, it hurt. But it reminded me why I kept going. I returned to Resurrection Creek on a warm afternoon in 1882. The town had changed, grown some, stabilized some. The saloon was still standing, though a different owner ran it now. The general store had new management after the old owner retired, living out his days peacefully instead of dying in a robbery that never happened. The young stranger I'd warned 5 years ago ran the stable now. He was married, with 2 children, his face carrying lines of happiness instead of desperation. When he saw me ride in, recognition sparked in his eyes. "It's you," he said simply. "The man from the saloon. It's me. You were right. About everything. Silver City. The work. The woman." He shook his head in wonder. "I wanted to thank you, but you'd already left town." "No thanks necessary. You made the choice. I just showed you the options." Still, he helped me stable my horse. "How did you know? How did you see my future?" I considered lying, considered making up some story about intuition or lucky guesses. But 5 years of carrying truth had taught me the value of honesty, even when it was hard. I went into a mine, I said. A cursed place. Came out with the ability to see connections, silver threads linking everything. Past, present, future, all woven together. I saw your threads leading to death, and I saw the alternative. Told you which path to take. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "That sounds like hell." "It is," I agreed. "But it's also the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Every life connected, every action matching, even when people don't realize it. The universe is one giant web, and we're all threads in it. Once you see that, really see it, you can't go back to thinking anything you do is meaningless." Can you see my future now? My kids' futures. I could see his daughter becoming a teacher, his son a soldier, both living full lives, making their own connections, weaving their own threads into the greater pattern. But I shook my head. I could, but I won't. You don't need that burden. Live your life. Love your family. Make good choices. That's all any of us can do. The future will come whether you see it or not. He nodded, accepting this. Will you stay? In town, I mean. People could use someone like you. I thought about it. About settling down. About staying in one place. About being the town's resident prophet and advisor. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. The loneliness of wandering was crushing some days, but the silver threads were pulling me elsewhere. West. There was a mining town in Colorado where something terrible was coming. I could feel it in the threads, see it at the edges of my vision, even through the spectacles. People who would need warning. Lives that could be saved. I can't, I said. The threads lead elsewhere. But thank you. For the offer. For making something good of your life. That matters more than you know. I left Resurrection Creek, for what I knew would be the last time. The threads didn't lead back here anymore. My path was elsewhere, following crisis and crossroads, helping where I could, bearing witness where I couldn't. The curse had become my calling. The sight had become my purpose. And though the weight of it crushed me some days, threatened to break me others, I kept walking, kept following the silver threads, kept choosing to see truth even when truth was unbearable. Because someone had to. Someone had to stand in the space between ignorance and knowledge, between comfortable lies and unbearable truth. Someone had to look at the silver threads connecting everything and say, yes, I see, and I'll help. That someone was me, the silver prophet, the man who sees, the devil's herald, the cursed one. I'd been called many things over the years, but the name that mattered most was the one the Espinosa Brothers had given me that final day in the mine. Brother. I was part of the silver now, part of its truth, part of its burden, and I'd carry it until my own threads finally ended, until my own death shroud brightened to blinding, and the connections I'd woven throughout my life pulled me forward into whatever came next. Until then, I walked. I watched. I warned. I wove my own thread into the great pattern, hoping that when it finally ended, the connections I'd made would matter. That was the real curse, and the real gift. The absolute certainty that everything mattered, even when it seemed like nothing did. Especially then. I rode west, toward Colorado, toward crisis, toward the next crossroad where lives hung in balance. The silver threads pulsed around me, visible even through the darkened spectacles, guiding me forward. And I followed, because that's what prophets do. Even reluctant ones, even cursed ones, even ones who'd found hell in a mine and brought back truth instead of treasure. We follow the threads wherever they lead, and we bear witness to the connections that bind us all. See you around, my friend. I've got another story for you.